Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Towers. I'm the Managing Director of ESS Small Business and ESS BIZTOOls. Welcome to this webinar today, where we're primarily going to talk about issues relating to COVID-19 coronavirus as it relates to small businesses and medium-sized enterprises. I'd also like to welcome the people who are viewing us live from Facebook. I hope you enjoyed this experience with us today. If you're watching us from Facebook and you have any questions, could you please turn on, Evelyn, your photo's coming up here now. Is that a technical issue there? So if you have any questions and you're watching from Facebook, can you send me an email, please? peter@essbiztools.com.au. And obviously, if you're watching this today through the webinar and you have any questions, can you type them into your computer in the chat box, and I will answer them later on. Whatever you thought 2020 was going to be about, think again. That was a comment made by Scott Morrison only about 4 weeks ago. I don't know whether he really knew what was going to happen when he made that comment, but it has certainly changed a lot of things in Australia. But let's not forget that COVID-19 coronavirus is really the end of a series of natural disasters in Australia in 2019-20. And some small businesses, farmers, primary producers, and bigger businesses, of course, are still trying to fix the problems that were caused by those natural disasters of drought, which some parts of Australia have had for years, bushfires, floods, and cyclones. And if you have got the ability to apply for a government loan or grant because of those natural disasters, I would urge you to do so that you can get that financial benefit in, so that you can set about restoring your business or your property to its original standard. But what we're going to be primarily looking at today is the COVID-19 coronavirus and what has happened. We've had business lockdowns for thousands of businesses around Australia, and you know it if you're involved in the lockdown. And for some of you, the lockdown has then affected your normal business operations. And we've seen what's been happening in major shopping centres around Australia. The smaller retailers, in many instances, have decided not to continue to operate during this period because it's been too difficult. There hasn't been enough customers coming into the shopping centres. There's a lot of people working at home, and that brings its own challenges. Some people are probably enjoying it and finding new ways of doing their business. I noticed in the Financial Review yesterday that some big businesses are really now starting to have a close look at this benefit of having people work at home. But there are some issues, and people need to be communicated with, make sure they still feel part of the team. The government has announced a $300 billion in stimulus packages so far. That's a lot of money, $300 billion. When I was a student, I don't think we'd even heard what $1 billion was. We used to have some debates as to how many noughts were in $1 billion, and now it just rolls off our tongue as if it's everyday occurrence. So $300 billion in 3 separate stimulus packages so far that have been primarily targeted at businesses, and in particular, small and medium-sized enterprises with turnovers under $50 million per annum. And we're going to look at some of those stimulus packages now, and then we're going to move into having a good look at the concepts of developing a COVID-19 survival plan to help you survive in your business. So what should you do? I think your first step is a bit the same as what I made at the beginning on the natural disasters. I would urge you to look closely at the stimulus packages that have been offered by the federal government and the state and territory governments. Don't forget them. In a webinar like this, where we're talking to people all over Australia, we are basically concentrating on the federal government's program. But please have a close look at what is available from your state or territory government, because they now all have coronavirus packages in the in place for their businesses in their states or territory. The second area is to understand how those various packages apply to you. Now, there's more information coming out every day. For one of the packages, which we're going to talk about shortly, the Department of Finance released 12 pages of notes last night. So we are all busy absorbing that information. And today, and probably why we're talking on this webinar, I'm sure why we're talking on this webinar, Parliament is sitting in Canberra, a reduced Parliament that both sides of politics have agreed to. And isn't it great to see the politicians starting to agree on some things? But they've agreed to a smaller representation, as long as they got the required quorum, to save politicians and their staff flying from all over Australia. Some of them wouldn't get back for a fortnight because of the various state embargoes that are now in place. But the package number 3 is going to Parliament today. We're going to talk about some of the matters included in that package in this webinar to you today. Some of that may change. Primarily, I understand, relative to the definition of a casual employee, but more about that later. Let's look first of all at businesses with turnovers under $50 million, which I assume is the bulk of the you people watching this webinar today, or watching it subsequently as a recording via YouTube, and obviously the people watching live on Facebook. So primarily, I'm going to concentrate in this presentation at businesses under $50 million. We do mention 500 million in one context, but we're not talking about the big end of town, if you like. So the first component that's available is that businesses will receive a tax-free boost. This is called the boost payment of up to $100,000 to help pay wages. Now that's the maximum, and that's what will be paid during this 6-month crisis period. And we all hope and pray that that is the end of the crisis. Although I noticed that Mr. Morrison and Professor Murphy, the Chief Medical Officer, are hedging their bets a little bit because they really don't know. So none of us know. But let's hope this is over within 6 months. The calculation of the boost payment, which is based on the amount of income tax that you have deducted from your employees' wages or salaries. And it will be up to 100% of that PAYG tax deduction, to a maximum in the first instance of $50,000. And the first business activity statement that is going to be assessed for this purpose is the business activity statement ending on the 28th of April. Now, I'm going to address this on a quarterly business activity statement basis. If you're lodging your business activity statements on a monthly basis, it is slightly different, but mathematically at the end of the day, it works out the same. So the first calculation is based on your business activity statement for the 3-month period ending March. So obviously it covers January and February and March. And you have to lodge that before the 28th of April. So you can earn a credit into your business activity statement on your account with the taxation office of up to $50,000 for that first quarter. So the tax office determines the amount and will credit that to your account. So you may get a credits of say $20,000. So that's your PAYGT tax. Your GST component might have been $10,000. So your total amount is $25,000 less the credit of $15,000. So you end up with a net payment of $10,000 that you have to pay. If it is calculated that you would have got a refund out of that calculation, then the tax office will either hold that in their system as a credit against a future business activity statement, or you can apply for that excess amount to be refunded into your bank account. Just make sure the tax office have your bank account details and they are undertaking to pay that within 14 days. There is going to be the opportunity to earn a further $50,000 based on the business activity statements that you lodge on the 28th of July and 28th of October. Now, this is not $50,000 for each of those business activity statements. You will get paid in July 50% of what your credit is passed on for the lodgement that has to be made on the 28th of April, and you will get that same amount in the business activity statement that has to be lodged on the 28th of October. If you pay salary and wages but are not required to deduct any PAYG tax, so the individual employees that you have in your team are not earning sufficient incomes to be taxed, so presumably they are earning under $18,000 each per annum, you will still receive a total over this 6-month period of $20,000. The first credit will be $10,000, which will apply to the business activity statement that has to be lodged by the 28th of April. And then you will receive 50% of that, $5,000 as a credit on the business activity statement that you lodge on the 28th of July, and again for the statement you lodge on the 28th of October. If you have any real concerns about how these calculations work, please contact your accountant, or you can send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. And I've already told you that last item. So let's move on now to the JobKeeper payment scheme. Now, what I'm going to run through this morning with you is based on the discussion papers that the government has released. This is the legislation which is undoubtedly being debated in Canberra as we speak. The government will pay $1,500 per fortnight to the employer for employees who the employer has paid. So the payment is made to the employer. If you're the operating your own businesses, it gets paid to you. It is based on your full-time and part-time employees and casual people that had been employed by you on a regular basis prior to the 1st of March for 12 months. Now, this is the controversial point, if you like. The federal opposition have been indicating that they would like that to be changed. I don't really know on what basis. They haven't really stated that as far as I know. And we will see what comes out of the debates in Canberra today as to whether there may be a change in the definition of a casual. And it can apply to people aged over 16. So as long as they're over 16 at the 1st of March 2020, they could be eligible for the employer to receive $1,500 every fortnight, as long as they are on the employer's payroll from now on. Now, they could have been stood down and have been re-engaged. It's up to the employer to determine whether they're actually going to be working. The government sees that this payment, this JobKeeper payment, is to keep people involved with your individual business, so that when this crisis ends, and it will end, and you are keen to get back into business, you can re-engage your normal team to reactivate the business. Otherwise, you've really got to go back to square one. The $1,500 per fortnight has to be the minimum amount that you pay to any of those employees. So it's a bonus for someone that's earning less than $1,500 per fortnight. And if someone is earning more, it is a subsidy contribution being made to the employer if you're still paying the original salary or wage to that employee earning more than $1,500 per fortnight. It's only a subsidy. But remember, you are receiving 100% of your PAYG tax that you are deducting from your employees' wages. So it's really $1,500 plus the 100% of your PAYG tax that you are effectively getting. But there's a big but about this. You have to register for the $1,500 per fortnight benefit. I haven't worked out why the government wants you to register, but they want all of us to register if you want to claim that amount, because we're about to move into the qualification you've got to make. So by registering, you are saying to the tax office that you believe that you have fulfilled the eligibility requirement to claim the JobKeeper payment. The 100% credit for your PAYG tax deductions from your employees will be automatically processed by the Australian Taxation Office based on the information that you lodge in your business activity statement. So that's the statement, ended March, has to be lodged by the 28th of April. That is the crystallizing event to get this whole process underway, but you do not have to register for that. So the JobKeeper payment scheme has started, kicked off on the 30th of March. And the tax office is going to be able to track this by the payments that are reported in the single touch payroll. So your payroll records that the tax office now has access to through single touch payroll has to be showing that all of the people that you're claiming have been paid. And you have to submit a report each month to the tax office stating the number of employees that you're employing that you are claiming the JobKeeper payment scheme subsidy for. And I assume that by the end of April, we're going to have all these forms supplied to us by the tax office. I can imagine there's some midnight oil being burnt in their offices as they get all this documentation prepared for everyone to fill in. Now, this is the big point, the eligibility, and there will be some debates over this, I'm sure. The eligibility is that to register for the JobKeeper payment, you are claiming that the turnover of your business has reduced by 30%. compared to a comparable period last year. The Department of Finance has issued some guidance on this, and they're saying that if you lodge your business activity statement on a quarterly basis, your comparison logically should be against January, February, March 2019 with the same period 2020. If you're a monthly lodger, you can compare March 2019 with March 2020. But the government has accepted that there are going to be a lot of businesses that have got difficulty with that type of comparison. There may have been an event in 2019 that substantially reduced turnover. There was major flooding in North Queensland and Northwest Queensland, which reduced business incomes. Your business might not have been operational in March 2019. It mightn't have started until July or August 2020. And there could have been any number of other reasons. So if you don't fit the key criteria that I just said of comparing March 2019 with March 2020 or January, February, March 19 with the same period in 20, you can apply, and I'd suggest via your accountants, to the Australian Taxation Office for a ruling. So you'd submit your information and say, based on our information, these are our actual figures. We think we can justify to you that in the last month or two, turnover has dropped 30%. And we believe that that is attributed to coronavirus. But you will then have to lodge that. I understand, though, that if the 30% is readily calculated in the comparison of the month in 2019 with the month in 2020, the tax office is going to accept that. Some of you may find that in 2019 as compared to 20 for the month of March, or even that first quarter, you haven't felt the impact of a drop. But if you find that that occurs in April or May or June, you can then lodge an application, but you will not be receiving the full $1,500 per fortnight for 6 months in that case. So you might only get paid the equivalent of that payment for a 5-month or a 4-month or a 3-month period. Again, that is an application you will have to make outside the normal system to the Australian Taxation Office. I hope that's clear. It's takes a bit of getting your head round. Now, the turnover amount that we're talking about is the turnover that you declare for GST. So what goes into your business activity statement that you're showing as turnover is the turnover that you have to declare here. But I wouldn't be including GST. It'd be the figure without GST, but it's the basis of how you do the calculation for your business activity statement, I think is what the Department of Finance meant in their latest pronouncement. And it's only Australian-based turnover. So if you have a operation in another country that you normally just feed into your Australian income because it's part of your Australian business, you don't have to include the income in either comparison, 2019 or 20, that originated overseas. And I've already said that the tax commissioner can use alternative tests to establish eligibility. I like to think that the tax office will be very appreciative that this is a scheme that's obviously been put into place by the Australian government, an enormous scheme to help businesses, and that should be their prime role. Only time will tell, of course. There's a few journalists which will keep us up to date on that, I'm sure. What I've shown on the screen now is a calculation of how you would calculate if you're a monthly lodger for your PA for your business activity statement. It's just a calculation and then calculate the percentage. In that case, the variance was more than 30%, so that business would be eligible to classify themselves as being able to register for the JobKeeper payment scheme. Let's turn to self-employed persons, and some of the viewers of this webinar may well be self-employed persons. You can also apply for the JobKeeper payment if you're a self-employed individual and your turnover has fallen, or you estimate will fall by 30% or more. You had an ABN before the 12th of March 2020. If you only got it in the last few days, you can't apply, or if you think you've got a very good reason, you'll have to contact the tax office. You had assessable income in 2018-19 because they're trying to see how your income has dropped. Now let's look at a few other alternatives. Partnerships. Only one partner can be nominated according to the ruling put out by the Department of Finance for the JobKeeper payment. In trusts, where you've got beneficiaries that are only receiving a trust distribution, only one beneficiary can be nominated. It appears that if you have a beneficiary who is an employee and is bona fide working in the business, a JobKeeper payment can be applied for them, but it's the ones that are just receiving a beneficiary distribution, you can only include one of them. And company directors who only receive directors' fees, only one director in that classification can be nominated. If they're a full-time employee as well, they can be included under the employee classification. So I hope that's making it a bit clearer. I now want to move on to charities because the Department of Finance has only just clarified this, and that is that charities who are registered with the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission. And unfortunately, I suspect that there's a lot of charities around Australia who are not registered with the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission. The guidelines are saying you have to be registered, and you could be eligible to receive these payments if your income turnover has fallen by 15%. I don't quite realise why charities are only having to fall by 15%, but that's what the pronouncement from the Department of Finance is saying. And I hope if you are an officer in a charity or director, I hope you've registered with the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission, because otherwise I think you might have a problem. So businesses have to register with the Australian Taxation Office. Over 400,000 people think they've registered, but all that they've done, I gather, is registered to be kept up to date by the ATO, because they won't be able to process any of these official registrations until after the legislation is passed, hopefully someday today or tonight in Canberra. And then I'm sure the ATO will be uploading those forms to their website, and you can then register. Now, the payments are at least a month in arrears. So the scheme started on the 30th of March. You're going to have to pay your nominated people who were employed on the 1st of March each week or each fortnight or once a month. And then in the first week of May, the ATO is going to make the payments to you. So obviously businesses need to make sure that your cash flow can stand that and you can make those payments. If not, you probably should be talking to your bank, and we're going to refer to a special category of loans that have been implemented because of this problem, and a little bit later. I've already told you that. First week of payment, first week of May. Now let's move into the loans, and this is called the Coronavirus SME Guarantee Scheme. We've got some great names, haven't we, out of all this. Now this is a support program for small businesses and medium-sized enterprises that are facing cash flow problems. And I imagine that's just about everyone at present. The government is going to give a 50% guarantee to the lender, to a bank. So the government's putting up 50% of the guarantee, and it's for new unsecured loans for working capital. Exactly what we just talked about. If you're going to have cash flow difficulties in paying your staff each month before you get reimbursed by the tax office, the government has instigated funding that the banks have access to funds that they can lend you. Now, this is only applicable for businesses with turnovers under $50 million per annum. Where did the money come from? My 96-year-old mother rang me and asked me, where's all this money coming from? I think she thought we had it in bank accounts. The country did. Well, the country's obviously borrowing the money. So the Reserve Bank, though, is supplying, they must have had some money, $90 billion facility to banks. Well, they've borrowed it also, but they're lending it to the banks at 0.25%. So the banks have got their hands on this money very cheap. The maximum loan that the bank can make to you in this category under the coronavirus SME guarantee scheme is $250,000. And that loan is for a term of 3 years. There's a 6 months repayment holiday that you can apply for. As I read the documentation from the Reserve Bank, it's an unsecured loan. Federal government's guaranteeing 50%. And you can access this money from it's already started. 23rd of March, some of the banks were handing out the money. And the Reserve Bank wants any money not allocated returned to them by the 30th of September. Why? The government's wanting this money in the system now. It's wanting to help you pay your wages that you're then going to get $1,500 per fortnight returned to you immediately, a month in arrears. They want you to have some money that you can pay your rent or whatever deal you can negotiate with your landlord. They're trying to keep businesses afloat, but it's emergency money. It's not money that they're providing to relaunch your business after the virus is over. Hopefully some of that money might be around at that time. Now, the Commonwealth Bank released a news release a couple of days ago, and they indicated that they've already lent $150 million to 1,850 businesses, 70% of them domiciled in New South Wales. New South Wales doesn't represent 70% of Australia, so I wonder where the rest of the Australian businesses are in applying. That money is there now, you can apply. And they listed the percentage of the allocation they'd made to what industries. And I found this interesting. Hospitality, 15%, construction, 13%, professional services, 12%, retail, 11%. So that doesn't add up to 100%, so there must be a whole lot of other smaller groups that obviously receive some of that money, some of those loan funds that have been issued. You don't have to borrow the full $250,000, but it's available. Go and talk to your bank. Tell them you want to get a loan under the coronavirus SME guarantee scheme. Now, the next title we've got to learn to live with now is the coronavirus supplement. This is available for people who, and the category that affects the audience we've got today is if you are a sole trader or a self-employed person whose work hours have fallen because of coronavirus, or your income's fallen by 20% or more as a result of coronavirus. I don't know why this category's fall in income is only 20%, whereas for the previous ones, we're looking at 30%, but this one's just 20%. So the coronavirus supplement is $550 per fortnight, and that will be paid to someone that meets the classification of this supplement, but you have to apply for it. And those forms are available on Centrelink's website. If you qualify for the coronavirus supplement, so you're a self-employed person whose work hours have dropped or your income's dropped by 20%, you can then access, if you wish, up to $10,000 of your superannuation prior to 30th of June 2020, and you can access a further $10,000 in the 3-month period, July to September 2020. That might help. There's also a subsidy for apprentices. If your business employs apprentices and the total working group is less than 20 full-time employees, and you are employing apprentices at the 1st of March, the government is offering a 50% subsidy of a maximum of $21,000 for 9 months. So this scheme is applying 1st of January to 30th September 2020. So the maximum payment can be $7,000 per quarter, making $21,000 in total. Doesn't matter how many apprentices or trainees you have, as long as there's only 20 full-time employees. We also have the new instant asset write-off scheme. You can acquire an asset for $150,000, and as long as it's installed ready for use by 30 June 2020, you will be able to write that off. Obviously, you're going to need the cash flow or reserve funds or ability to borrow that money to complete that. The government has also introduced a 50% accelerating depreciation deduction on other assets, which will be available until June 2021. So that goes a lot longer. Well, what I've summarised so far has been the government's response, how they're going to help you. Please talk to your accountants. And if you've got any problems on any of that, you can send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au. Let's look at what you're now going to do about all this. What's your present position? I know many of you were probably rather dismal when all this started to occur, but it's now time, with respect, to think about what you're going to do with your business and where it's headed. So what's your position? Are you included in one of the government instigated lockdowns? That's difficult unless you're able to do something else with your business, and some people are doing that. Some would appear to be quite successful. Are you able to operate under the restricted trading conditions? But in trying to encourage you to be proactive, to accept that this is not going to last forever, there is some light, it might only be very small at present, at the end of that tunnel. My suggestion is that you first of all calculate what your projected income is going to be week by week for the next 26 weeks or 52 weeks preferably, but at least 26 weeks for this crisis. And then you review your team and to determine which ones you need to retain. Now, if they were employed on the 1st of March, you could in fact enter into an arrangement with them that all they're going to get paid is the $1,500. So you may have laid them off. That's the basis that you can keep them on your books, if you like. But you need to work out the team you need for the work, the cash flow in that you anticipate receiving over those next 26 weeks. And to do this, you probably need to talk to your human resources consultant to make sure you're giving appropriate notification to your team on what you're proposing to do. And if you don't have a human resources consultant, you can contact us. And I'm going to talk about a special service that we're starting from next Wednesday. And our human resources consultant, Jordan Lowry, will be one of the keynote speakers in that presentation. So if you've got any questions about what you should be doing with your team, I'm going to be inviting you a little later to send them in. You need to look at your supply line situation. Do you need to make any changes? What have you learned? I notice in today's media, there's strong talk now starting to emerge about what businesses should be doing about their supply chains. Should more manufacturing be brought back on shore into Australia so that we can be the masters of our own destiny? And I think there's going to be a lot of developments in that area. What's going on with the products you've already ordered from your suppliers overseas? When are they likely to be received? Contact your suppliers, talk about your orders, but also, are they willing to change your payment terms? Instead of wanting a very prompt payment, are they prepared to give you 2 or 3 months to make the payment? Or can they make some assistance available to you? If you don't ask them, you won't find out. Landlords, well, they've been very much in the media the last couple of days, and I understand the national government is trying to make some sort of decisions or recommendations with landlords, not only for business premises, but also for private residences. But it's obviously a time when you should be having a communication with your landlord to see what improvements can be made to the system. And the various state and territory governments are making their own rules relating to landlords and their treatment of tenants. Review outstanding debtors. This is a very important area. What are your outstanding debtors? Could you speed up the process? Can someone get on the telephone and negotiate with someone that's well outside your normal payment terms to try to get these payments made quicker? Because that could represent cash for your business. Stock inventory. Invariably, I find when I go into a business and we start trying to work out where some money might be locked up, it's in stock. For the businesses that have got stock, now's the time to analyse it, work out what's surplus to requirements or what's 3 years old, so what's it still in stock for? What was last year's fashion if you're in the fashion business? Let's put it all together and try and have a sale, try and sell it, get some cash. Surplus assets. A lot of businesses build up surplus assets. Someone went off to an auction one day and got carried away and bought a $150,000 machine and brought it back, and it's worked for 3 days and it's been sitting in the shed now for 2 years. Well, do you really want it? I'd be looking at trying to sell it and get some money in, because even though the supermarkets are saying they don't really want anyone to use cash anymore, they want everyone to use tap and go credit cards, cash is still king in a business sense. So out of all this, I'm suggesting you prepare budgets and cash flow forecasts for the next 6 months and have a good look at them as to how you think your business is going to travel. Now, you can only do that based on the information you got today. I really don't know if we've got any more major disasters that haven't been told to us yet. And by looking at the graph last night, it does appear to be getting close to that flattening out that the leaders have been telling us we hope to get. So hopefully you're able to prepare some projections fairly accurately and discuss those results with your accountant, or indeed you may have had your accountant involved to do this whole process with you, wearing a chief financial officer hat. Because when we run webinars like this for accountants, that's what we're telling them that they should be doing, or suggesting that they should be doing with you. We think they should be offering you a broader service than a tax agent service, because most of you are not looking for tax information at this stage. I think you're looking for business advice. So your accountant should be wearing a chief financial officer hat, looking at a broader spectrum than tax. Now, unfortunately, when you get to this stage and you've done your cash flows and everything else, some businesses may have to close up. If that's the situation that any of our viewers are in, I extend my sympathies to you. This is very difficult. Perhaps you should look at, in that case, just shutting down for the remainder of the disaster, and hopefully you've recharged your batteries and you're able to get back into business when this disaster's over. But that's something you need to talk to your accountant about. But can you now develop a business case to make an application to get some money from a bank? And now would be the time to do it and take advantage of that Commonwealth guaranteed loan of up to $250,000. But you might want to talk to your bank about a loan for other purposes as well. So what should you be doing from a management point of view? I think you need a coronavirus disaster team, a small team, 2 or 3 people, probably not including the owner or the CEO. Give it to management if you can. Now, some of you are likely to be very small, so you're probably going to have to be involved. You might be it. But the whole idea is to say, let's have a discussion every day, 5 to 10 minutes. Sometimes it might take hours, of course, and look at what's happening. There are pronouncements coming out from the federal government virtually every day. There's some very interesting articles that are published on the internet. And there is newspapers, the Australian and the Financial Review have a series of in-depth articles every day. And you might get some clues out of that or see some new grants that have been offered or whatever. So that team would be very important for you. You'll have some of your staff undoubtedly working at home. You need to make sure that that's been done right and that as you're paying these people, you're going to be getting value for money. If you don't already have daily team meetings or huddles, as they tend to be called, why not start them, especially if you've got people working at home? Subscribe to Zoom or Skype if you're not already doing so, and have a communication. Keep the team in contact with one another. It can be very lonely working at home, and some people will not be used to it. And some will be working under slightly difficult conditions. Their spouse might or partner might be at home as well. And at least for the next couple of weeks in most parts of Australia, children will be home because schools are on holidays. And there's a real chance that schools might not be reassembling in their traditional sense, that lessons are going to be delivered via the internet. So how's that affecting your team member working at home? Perhaps you need to have a discussion with them. Keep in touch with suppliers. Consider trying to create some new supply chains. I think one of the issues that's come out of all this is businesses in Australia got too much of their manufacturing centered in one country. And perhaps it should be diversified to some other countries as well. Keep in touch with customers, very important. Talk to your customers. What are they doing? What's happening with their customers? What's their orders going to look like in the future? And monitoring the cash flow. A close friend of mine who's one of our keynote speakers in the special webinars that we're going to talk to you about in a moment was a chair of a public company for 11 years. He chairs a number of smaller companies and accountancy firms and professional firms, and told me yesterday that he's saying to them, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. I want you to look at it daily. So that's the emphasis that he's putting on the companies that he's involved in. Review costs. Go through your P&L account line by line. What can be eliminated? And your team manual might need to be eliminated. Sorry, might need to be updated. I didn't mean to say the word eliminated then. Might need to be updated to take into account what's happening out of coronavirus. And we're going to have Jordan Lowry with us next Wednesday in our special webinar. And if you've got any questions relative to anything to do with your team, human resources, or workplace health and safety, we're going to give you an email address where you can send them into in a moment. So we can assist you. We've developed a website for small businesses. Please go to it, www.esssmallbusiness.com.au, where you can go on there and look at the material which we have got under the heading Survival in Difficult Times, because that's what we call this total package. It's covering the COVID-19 coronavirus, but also it's covering those natural disasters. So there's individual papers available on the various government loans, grants, and incentives and subsidies that are now available. Some of those papers are for free, others have got a charge attached to them from $11 to $22. And then we got some packages. So you can get a basic package, which will give you some idea of what all this is about, which will cost an investment of $69. And there's samples of the material on the site. We have a product which we call the reference paper we've written to assist businesses. There are 40 sections in it, and it's available for $120, including GST. It normally works in conjunction with the next item, which is our questionnaire workbook. There are 37 detailed individual questionnaires on all aspects of a business. And if you're looking for some further information, it is linked to the reference book that I just referred to. So you can subscribe for the questionnaires for $150, including GST, or you can get everything that we've got for businesses under this Survival in Difficult Times Coronavirus heading for $250, including GST. Samples are shown on our website in the Survival in Difficult Times Learn More. And when you click on, it is very clear. It's the first thing you're going to look at. And if you've got any questions, please send me an email. And there's papers, I've already told you on that. We've decided with our affiliates, we have 10 affiliates around Australia who supply services like budgets and cash flow software, human resources, workplace health and safety, marketing, business advice, legal services to accountants, business advisors and bookkeepers, but also to small and medium-sized enterprises. So we've decided to bring that group together to run a series of complimentary webinars, which we're going to have 2 a week running, one for small and medium-sized enterprises, which are going to be presented on a Wednesday at 12 noon, Australian Eastern Standard Time. And the other ones are targeted for accountants, bookkeepers, and business advisors. And they're going to be on a Friday at 12 noon, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So the one for, and charities are included in the small business, medium-sized enterprises. The concept is a weekly discussion on issues. We want to help you restore confidence and start planning the building of your future in your business. This is very important because the end of September is going to come round, hopefully a bit quicker than what we all think. You want to be ready to go when that happens, when the government lifts these restrictions on social interaction around and people can start getting back to work again. So if you've got any questions on any aspect to do with your business, we're going to ask you to send us an email addressed to peter@essbiztools.com.au, and I will be distributing that to our panel, and I'm going to show you who's on that panel in a moment, so that we can get the answers ready for you when we have the live webinar. And on the live webinar, you can also ask questions. So the first webinar for small businesses and medium-sized enterprises is on next Wednesday, the 15th of April at 12 noon, AEST. My initial reaction is we're not going to be ready for this, but we are as ready as what we're going to be. The people we have on our panel are experts. They're all very much involved in helping businesses and clients on this whole campaign relative to COVID-19 coronavirus. Our bigger problem, I think, is getting 1 hour of their time. You can register for this free webinar at www.esssmallbusiness.com.au/webinars. So just go on there and register. It's free. There is no obligation at all. This is our community service to try to help businesses all over Australia survive this period, plan how to survive it, but then start gearing up to be able to meet the challenges of a whole new business operation after September. So the panel members include myself as the chair, Andrew Geddes, who's well known in a lot of business circles around Australia. He was the former chair for 11 years of Green Cross, a top 200 ASX company, and he is well known in accounting circles as an accounting mentor and coach. Paul Barnaby, also a senior accountant, now retired from direct accounting duties, but a consultant on budgets and future planning. And he's the Australian manager for Plan Guru, who are one of the world's leading software developers for budgets and cash flow forecasts. We have Jordan Lowry, who's the Managing Director of Blackstone Business Group. He is an expert in Fair Work Australia requirements, human resources issues, and workplace health and safety. Ashley Evans, Director of AAA Consulting, is an ex-bank manager and leads a company full of bank managers and former bank staff, and they are there to assist in putting together general financial arrangements for businesses, whether it's leases, hire purchase agreements, or whatever, and you can talk to them about that. Priscilla B. Smith is a partner in Cloud9 Associates. She runs an accountancy business in Brisbane, but also trains business people who want to undertake their own bookkeeping and even some of their accounting taxation services. Kevin Thiel is an accountant. He's the director of Future Ready Group. He primarily is involved with businesses these days offering management accounting services. So don't talk to Kevin about taxation issues. He's not interested. What he's interested in is setting up proper management accounts to help your individual business operations. Amanda Gascoigne from the Hunter Valley is an accountant also, who supplies services to accountants and SMEs to make sure you are communicating correctly with your customers or potential customers, and developing good work practices to ensure that you can live to a grand old age and enjoy your business activities. Trent Butler is an accountant from Sydney who coaches accounting firms and businesses in the use of social media and communications and discussions with clients. Jeff Goodrich is from Darwin. He's an expert in business operations. He heads an organization that has 380 businesses as members, and he is going to bring a lot of expertise from a pure business sense onto our panels. So the first panel, and we're going to have myself as chair and two of those panel members in each of the webinars, and they'll be rotated. So every 4 weeks, they'll be back over. So that's going to be 6 times, and then at least the next 6 months. The first panel is going to comprise Paul Barnaby, who is going to be talking about preparing budgets and cash flow forecasts and how you can do that accurately so that you've got information you can submit to banks. And Jordan Lowry, the Managing Director of Blackstone Business Group, who's going to be looking at all the issues relative to your team members. So if you're interested in participating, please register at peter@essbiztools.com.au. Send me an email to say you wish to register, because we've only just made up our mind. We haven't really put that registration, I don't think. Oh, yes, we have, yeah. I'll get into trouble here. So you go on to www.esssmallbusiness.com.au/webinars, where you can register for that webinar next Wednesday at midday, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Now, I can't see that I've got any questions. I hope I've answered everything you've got. If not, you can send me an email, peter@essbiztools.com.au, and I will get a reply back to you. Or you can save your questions up and ask them to the panel next Wednesday. But preferably still send them in for us so I can make sure that the panel has done a little bit of homework if they need to be able to answer that. Thank you for participating in this webinar today, but in all seriousness, can I extend to you all our best wishes that you will be able to survive during this very difficult period. You have to keep yourself well, and think about where your business activities are going. If we can help you in any way, don't hesitate to contact us, peter@essbiztools.com.au, or telephone me on 1-800-232-088. We have recorded this webinar, and we will be sending a link to the recording to you, and we'll also be placing it onto YouTube and making it generally available to businesses all over Australia. So if any of your colleagues are interested, can you tell them that, or get them to contact us and we'll send them a link. I look forward to talking to you all again next Wednesday when we present our first panel to assist small businesses and medium-sized enterprises and charities survive the coronavirus. Have a great day. Goodbye.